Have you ever felt as though your life has completely unraveled? As if you've reached your breaking point? Like everything you once built came crashing down right in front of you, leaving nothing but ruins behind? There are people who wake up every single morning with a heavy chest, yet still manage to smile at work. People who cry silently behind a locked bathroom door. People who drive around for hours with no direction, simply to avoid going home and facing the emptiness waiting for them. But here's something you may not have realized. God often begins his greatest works at the very moment we think it's all over. The Bible tells us about Job, a man who lost everything. His children, his possessions, even his health. And yet, he never gave up on God. Do you know how his story ends? God gave him back everything, multiplied twice over. Right now, it may seem like there's no way out. Maybe everything around you is collapsing. But do you know what God does with rubble? He rebuilds. And think about this. How many stories of resilience and triumph were born from rock bottom? Take the story of Oprah Winfrey, for instance. She endured abuse during her childhood, was rejected, went through severe hunger. But she never gave up. She believed that her past didn't have the authority to dictate her future. And today, she is one of the most influential voices on earth. Don't give up. God is still writing your story. And he never leaves a book unfinished. Have you ever prayed with such intensity, your heart nearly bursting with desperation, only to see no change at all? Have you ever knelt in your room, in the bathroom, in your car, just hoping for a sign, for a word, for anything, and all you got in return was silence? It's in moments like these that many begin to question, has God forgotten me? Am I being punished? Has he turned his face away from me? That's when we can easily slip into a dangerous cycle. Doubt creeps in. The weight on your chest grows heavier. Your mind starts whispering that maybe there's no plan. Maybe this is all meaningless. But what most people don't realize is this. God's silence is rarely a rejection. Often, it's preparation. It's growth. It's protection. There's a story in the Bible that speaks deeply to anyone who has ever felt like this. The story of Joseph. Betrayed by his own brothers. People from his own household, his own blood. Thrown into a pit like an inconvenience. Sold as a slave, taken to a foreign land, falsely accused, and locked away in prison for something he never did. And it wasn't just a brief moment, it was years. Years of silence. Years where Joseph could have thought, God has abandoned me. But deep within him, something still believed. And that's what saves us, continuing to believe, even when everything around us insists otherwise. Perhaps that's exactly where you are right now. Maybe you've lost your job and can't see a way forward. Maybe someone you love has walked away, and it feels like the ground has vanished beneath your feet. Maybe you're battling illness, emotional storms, mounting debts, and everything feels closed off, like there's nowhere else to go. But let me offer you a shift in perspective, something that might help you see this season differently. God moves in the silence. Heaven hasn't gone quiet. It's working behind the scenes, where your eyes can't see. And it's in that silence that he builds the most. You know what's fascinating? Most people believe that the miracle happens when circumstances change. But the real miracle is when nothing changes, yet you keep going. When you choose to carry on without having all the answers. When you drag yourself out of bed, even while carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's faith. That's worship. That's looking up to God and saying, I don't see it, but I trust you. And look, this isn't easy. How many times have you wanted to disappear? Woken up completely drained, feeling like it wouldn't matter if you were here or not. How often have you wondered if it would all be simpler if you just gave up? Yet here you are. You're still standing. And that speaks volumes. It reveals that within you lives a strength you might not even realize you have. And that strength has a name. It's grace. It's mercy. It's God holding you up when you've run out of strength to stand on your own. There are so many people walking through this same silence. People who laugh at work, but weep quietly in the restroom. People who post smiling photos, but feel completely empty inside. People who take their kids to school, who keep their homes in order, who pay every bill, but feel invisible, like no one truly sees how much it takes just to keep going. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been waiting for a sign, any sign, to tell you, don't give up. And if that's the case, then hear this with your whole heart. This is not the end. There is still a plan. Still a purpose. And God hasn't given up on you. You don't have to feel His presence to know He's there. God's presence doesn't rely on your mood or your achievements. It is steady, unshakable, often quiet, but always real. And it's in that silence where He shapes you, changes you, gets you ready for what's ahead. Want to see a real-life example of this? Think about Denzel Washington, one of the most celebrated actors on the planet. But when he was younger, people saw no promise in him. He failed auditions, was criticized for how he looked, dismissed completely. But during a time of prayer with a woman at church, he was given a prophetic word: you will speak to millions. You will inspire the world. And though he didn't see it right away, he believed. He carried on, worked hard, stayed the course. And today, he not only acts, he uses his voice to speak of God, of faith, of calling. Why? Because he didn't give up in the silence. He trusted the process. And maybe that's what you're being called to do now. Even when you don't see the answer. Even when you don't feel the comfort. Even when all seems still. Just trust. Try something. This week, each day, set aside a moment just for you and God. It doesn't matter when, morning, during your commute, right before bed. But during that time, don't ask for anything. Just speak. Pour your heart out. Say how you feel, as if you're speaking to your closest friend. And then, when you're done, sit in silence for a minute. Just listen. Just be still. You'll be amazed at the peace that begins to settle within you. Because God speaks in silence. And when He does, even without words, your soul hears Him. So if everything around you feels quiet, it's because something within you is being rebuilt. He's working on something that your eyes can't yet see, but your heart can start to believe in. Just hold on a little longer. Take a deep breath. Take one more step. Because heaven is still writing. And the next page may just be the start of your breakthrough. There are times in life when everything seems to fall apart all at once. You look behind you and miss the person you used to be. You look ahead and see only uncertainty. And in the present, there's just pain. It's like life struck so hard it knocked the wind out of you. People keep moving. The world keeps spinning. But inside, it feels like everything has come to a halt. You try to smile, but it feels empty. You try to be strong, but even strength aches. You pretend everything's fine, but your soul is tired of pretending. It's in that place that many believe they've reached the end. And maybe this is exactly where you find yourself right now, trying to piece together how things spiraled to this point. Wondering at what moment it all slipped through your fingers. When did everything begin to collapse? You look at the marriage that's fallen apart, the child who's drifted away, the money that's run dry, the health that's deteriorated, and you say to yourself, there's no way back from this. But it's in that very place that God often chooses to move. Because when everything falls apart, when there's nothing left to hold on to, when you hit rock bottom, that's where He starts to build again. Have you ever thought that sometimes it's only by losing what's superficial that we come to discover what truly matters? At times, God allows us to be stripped of everything we thought we couldn't live without, just to reveal that He is the one thing we can never truly lose. What looks like the end to us might just be the beginning through His eyes. God doesn't operate within the limits we set. He works according to His purpose. And His purpose always goes far beyond anything we could comprehend. In the Bible, Job's story is a powerful cry of hope for anyone who believes it's all over. Job was a righteous man, devoted to God. Yet in a single moment, he lost his children, his health, his wealth. He was left alone, ill, even scorned by his own wife. But through all that, he never cursed God. He wept. He asked questions. He felt crushed. But he endured. And because of that, God restored everything, twice over. Every last thing. That's not a tale. It's a testimony. Because God doesn't just allow pain, He redeems it. Now let's think for a second. How many people do you know who now have remarkable stories to share, stories born in the heart of a crisis? The most powerful testimonies often began with a moment that seemed like a dead end. A heartbreak, a business collapse, a betrayal. That's when we're forced to look inward, to rebuild, to let God take up the pen and write the next chapter. Have you heard Oprah Winfrey's story? As a child, she suffered sexual abuse, rejection, and grew up in severe poverty. As a teenager, she became pregnant and tragically lost the baby. She even tried to end her own life. And yet, years later, she emerged as one of the most influential women in the world. How? Because she didn't let the trauma define her. She didn't remain frozen in the desert. She kept going. She persevered. She dared to believe that what seemed like the end could be the beginning of something entirely new. And it was. Now, take a look at your life. What feels beyond repair? What have you looked at and thought, this can't be fixed? Maybe it's a broken relationship. Maybe it's a silent depression. Maybe it's a debt that feels like a mountain, perhaps thousands or even tens of thousands of pounds that feel impossible to repay. Maybe it's the fear of what's to come, fear of being alone, or fear of death itself. But the same God who restored Job, who raised up Oprah, who changed the course of so many lives, he can do the same for you. Maybe all it takes is a single step. A step of bravery. A step of belief. A step toward returning to God. Returning to yourself. Returning to hope. To dreaming again. To breathing again with a renewed sense of purpose. Because when God steps in, even dust becomes the raw material for something glorious. Even ashes become a testimony. Even weeping becomes a song. And yes, it's incredibly hard to believe that when everything is lying in ruins, when the bills keep stacking up and the only phone calls you get are from creditors, when the ache of loneliness presses in and it feels like no one sees you, when your reflection in the mirror no longer looks like someone you admire. But that's the very place where God begins his deepest work. Because he doesn't see as the world sees. Where the world sees failure, God sees a fresh start. Where the world sees loss, God sees a seed. Where the world sees an end, God sees a new beginning. You don't need to understand how it's all going to come together. You don't need to have the full picture right now. Just know that even now, even here, it's not over. You simply need to believe that you will make it through. That there is still a path ahead. That God has not finished with you yet. Here's something you could try. For the rest of this week, each day, write down 3 things you've overcome. It doesn't matter how small they might seem. It could be the morning you managed to get out of bed despite not wanting to. Or the moment you remembered someone and didn't cry. Or that day you chose to keep going. Write them down. Because each of these small triumphs is proof that your story hasn't reached its conclusion. You're in the middle of something. And being in the middle means you're still being shaped. Pain is not your final chapter. It's just a pause in the sentence. And the one holding the pen is God. He's still writing. And when God writes, even the wilderness can bloom. Even a dry valley can be filled with life. Even you, who might be on the verge of giving up, will smile again, will believe again, will live again. Because what looks like the end to you might only be the beginning that God has prepared. There are moments when we look in the mirror and whisper to ourselves, I can't do this. I'm not worthy. I don't have what it takes. And sadly, many give up before even trying, burdened by a weight they were never meant to carry. The weight of comparison, of fear, of guilt, of shame. That constant feeling that everyone else is more spiritual, more prepared, more righteous, more ready. And that holds you back. It chokes your confidence. It creates a distance between the person you are and the person God has called you to become. But ask yourself, is God really searching for the strongest, the most moral, the most capable? Everything in Scripture screams the opposite. God isn't after perfection. He's seeking availability. He's drawn to hearts that say, here I am, even if they tremble, even if they carry scars, even if they've made mistakes. Because in God's kingdom, the ones who admit their weakness are the very ones most ready to encounter his power. Remember Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers. He walked on water. He declared he would never leave the Lord's side. Yet in the darkest hour, he denied even knowing him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And just after that third denial, Jesus looked straight at him. Can you imagine the weight of that glance? The crushing guilt, the flood of shame, the deep sense of failure. But what did Jesus do afterward? He restored Peter. He entrusted him with the care of his people. Peter had stumbled, but he wasn't cast aside. He was lifted up again. Because God doesn't discard those who fall. He heals. He renews. He transforms. Maybe right now, you feel like Peter, full of regret, ashamed, thinking you've thrown away all your chances, wondering if God could ever use someone like you again, after what you did, after what you said, after what you've lived through. But hear this truth: no failure is too great for the God who rebuilds. If he chose David after his adultery, if he used Moses even after he had taken a life, if he turned Saul into the Apostle Paul, then why wouldn't he raise you up as well? You don't need a flawless life to experience something remarkable with God. What he's looking for is a willing heart, a readiness to start again, to try once more, to say yes, even while afraid, because God equips those he calls. He doesn't choose you based on who you are today. He calls you because he knows what he can shape in you, what he can accomplish through you, despite your weaknesses. How many times have you already been used by God without even realizing it? In that message you sent that reached someone at the perfect moment. In that word of encouragement that slipped into a conversation without planning. In that embrace that gave someone just enough strength to not give up that very day. You don't have to be extraordinary for God to do extraordinary things through you. You just need to be available, willing to believe that he still writes beautiful endings, even after broken beginnings. Do you really think this is mere coincidence? No, it's not. It's purpose. God has already been working through you in the smallest things, and now he wants all of you. Don't assume you need a microphone, a stage, or a formal ministry to be used by him. He works through you exactly where you are, at your job, at school, at home, with your children, with your friends. Sometimes, your living room is your most important mission field. Sometimes, your quiet prayer while doing the dishes is your most meaningful act of worship. And sometimes, your most powerful sermon is the way you show kindness to someone who has hurt you. Never look down on the place you're in, because if God is with you there, then that place becomes sacred. Do you know someone who understood this deeply? Nick Vujicic. Born without arms or legs, he suffered mockery and endured severe emotional turmoil. There were moments he wanted to give up, convinced that he was a mistake, that he was worthless, that God could never use him. But then, one day, he gave his pain to the Creator. And God turned that pain into a message. Today, Nick inspires millions across the globe, not because he's flawless, but because he made himself available. Maybe the greatest miracle in your life won't be something God does for you, but something he does through you. And it all starts when you stop running and start saying yes. Even when you don't understand. Even when fear is loud. Even when you feel completely unworthy. Because truthfully, no one is enough on their own. But with God, the weak overcome giants. The least likely becomes the one in charge. The rejected becomes a guide. The overlooked becomes the chosen. Make a simple promise today. For the next 30 days, each morning when you wake up, speak this phrase out loud: God, I am not perfect, but I am yours. Use me however you wish. That's it. It doesn't have to sound impressive. It doesn't have to be poetic. It only has to be genuine. Because God listens to the heart before he hears the words. And when he finds honesty, he turns dust into vessels. He turns chaos into testimony. He turns weakness into strength. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly on time for what God is about to do next. The only question is, are you willing? There are some pains that cannot be easily explained. The ones that don't show up in scans, that others can't see, that you try to ignore, but they remain. They throb in silence. Some are caused by loss, others by rejection, and many are born from broken dreams or betrayals that cut so deeply they leave invisible scars. When enough of these build up, you start asking, if God loves me, why did this happen? If He's with me, why didn't He stop it? Did He forget about me somewhere along the way? Perhaps that's exactly where you are now, trying to find meaning in the pain, searching for purpose in the struggle. But when we look to the cross, what do we see? Even the Son of God went through suffering. And not just a little. Jesus wept. He felt afraid. He felt anguish. In the Garden of Gethsemane, He sweat drops of blood. He asked the Father to take the cup from Him, if possible. And what reply did He receive? Silence. The heavens said nothing. The Father did not intervene. But even then, Jesus did not run away. He stayed. He trusted. And what does that show us? That God's silence is not the same as His absence. That pain doesn't mean He has left us. Often, it's within the pain that His purpose becomes clearest. We spend so much of life trying to escape pain. But some things can only grow inside us through hardship. It's in the suffering that we learn to lean more on God. It's in the hurting that we mature. It's often in the midst of pain that we finally hear the whispers we used to drown out with the chaos of daily life. No, pain itself isn't something to be celebrated. But what it does mean is that God never lets pain go to waste. Even our most crushing moments can become part of His work to shape, to teach, and to restore us. Have you ever noticed how the most thoughtful, understanding, and compassionate people tend to be the ones who have endured the deepest wounds? That's not just coincidence. It's because when pain is surrendered into the right hands, it becomes a tool of healing. Not only for ourselves, but for the people we encounter. Perhaps what you're enduring now isn't meant to break you, but to prepare you to become someone who brings healing to others. There are countless people walking around with silent wounds, smiling on the outside but hurting desperately inside. And one day, you might be the answer to someone's prayer, not because your life was perfect, but because you survived what you're facing now. It's not easy to see this when you're still standing in the storm. But believe this, you will not leave this season the same way you entered it. You'll emerge stronger, wiser, more understanding, and more deeply connected to God. Pain can even be a signal that God is pulling you away from something that no longer fits His plan for your life. Sometimes, we hold on to places, relationships, or routines that no longer nourish us, and then the pain comes. Not as punishment, but as a wake-up call. As a divine nudge toward something new. Comfort might keep us still, but pain pushes us forward. It teaches us to truly pray, to truly depend, to truly surrender. Have you ever heard of J.K. Rowling? Before she became one of the most influential authors in the world, her life had fallen apart. She had no job. She was battling depression. She was raising a child on her own. She wrote parts of her first book in cafes because she couldn't afford heating in her flat. She was turned down by numerous publishers. But she didn't give up. She wrote anyway. In her struggle. Without financial help. Without approval. And now, her story inspires millions. Why? Because she walked through the pain. She didn't let it be the end. You can walk through it too. Pain isn't pleasant, but it can lead to transformation. And no matter what kind of pain you're carrying today, whether it's in your body, your emotions, or your spirit, God knows it all. Every bit of it. He feels it with you. He cries alongside you. And even more, He assures you, weeping may last through the night, but joy comes in the morning. He never promised that the night wouldn't come, only that it wouldn't last forever. You don't have to pretend you're fine. You don't have to hide your tears. God sees them. He understands them. He holds them. But He also wants you to remember, this pain has a limit. This burden that feels too heavy right now will eventually lift. It will heal. It will become part of your story. And one day, you'll look back and see that even this hurt carried you closer to your calling. If you're willing, try this. Over the next few days, write down what you're feeling. It doesn't have to be pretty or structured, just let it flow, even if it's jumbled. Write as though you're writing a letter to God. And then, read it aloud. Say everything you haven't been able to say until now. Will it hurt? Perhaps. But it will also begin to heal. Because the moment we stop burying our pain is the moment it starts to transform. And if, in the middle of it all, you keep going, crying if you need to, stumbling if you must, you'll begin to notice something stirring inside you. Something new. Something blooming. Because when pain is held in God's hands, it doesn't destroy. It nourishes. It softens the ground. It awakens seeds that have long lain dormant. And there will come a time when everything that now feels like it's breaking you will actually be what lifts you up with strength you've never known. You haven't been abandoned. You're being shaped. God is working in ways your eyes can't yet perceive, but your heart will soon witness. Don't give up. Not now. Not when the season that lies ahead could be the most beautiful bloom your life has ever seen. In those silent nights when you cried alone. In the moments you stayed quiet, hoping for some sort of answer. In the times when everything within you whispered that it wasn't worth it anymore. And yet, you're still here. You're still standing. And that alone is a miracle. God hasn't finished with you. Your story is still unfolding. And when God holds the pen, even the most painful chapters end up being part of a breathtaking conclusion. So please, don't give up. Not because it's simple, but because you are not walking this path alone. And one day, you will look back and feel nothing but gratitude for not giving up when you felt like stopping right here. Take a deep breath, close your eyes for a moment, and reflect on everything you've already endured. Remember the sleepless nights that no one knew about. The tears soaked into your pillow. The mornings you forced yourself out of bed with no motivation, and yet you rose. Think of the countless times you bottled your pain to avoid worrying others. How often you smiled and said, "I'm fine," when inside, you were falling apart. And now look at you. You're still here. You made it through. Your heart still beats, even if it's weary. Your soul may carry wounds, but you're still on your feet. And that's not weakness. That's a miracle. You may not have realized it, but with each step, no matter how heavy, God was walking right beside you. Each time you thought about giving up, but didn't, heaven itself leaned in to honor your courage. You are stronger than you think, tougher than you believe, more precious than you could ever grasp. God didn't make a mistake when He created you. He knew about every scar you'd carry, every fall, every fear, every breakdown. And still, He chose to love you with an unending love. He chose to walk with you, to call you by your name, not by your failures. He sees far beyond what you show. He knows what no one else knows, and still, He calls you His child. And if today you feel like you've reached your limit, know that it's right there, at your edge, that God loves to act. He specializes in restoring ruins, reviving dreams, and healing hearts. And His work in you is not finished. You may be in the middle of the process, but the ending of this story already has a name: triumph. Don't let this pain be the final chapter. Don't throw in the towel just yet. Because the same hand that allowed the wind to rise is the one that calms the storm. And God is in the boat with you. Even when it seems He's sleeping. He's present. So cry, if you must. But keep going. Stumble, but don't surrender. Waver, but don't step back. Because every one of your steps, no matter how small, is being etched in heaven with ink of eternity. And one day, you will look back and say, "It was tough. But it was worth it. It hurt. But I made it through. I nearly gave up, but God held me." And on that day, on that day, you'll understand that every moment of silence, every season of waiting, every tear you cried, was stitching together the most beautiful testimony of your life. And you won't be able to hold back the tears. Because it will be there, in that moment, that you'll finally feel in the deepest part of your soul, that you were never forgotten. You were never overlooked. Never once were you loved with only part of His heart. From the very beginning, you've been the reason why God kept weaving stories filled with promise and redemption. And now, He has chosen to craft one of the most extraordinary of them all, through your life.